Out of Order Gun Rights Podcast, episode 78.
Welcome to the Out of Order Podcast, your window into the firearms community, exploring those shaping the future of our rights and protecting our lifestyle, laws, legal cases, activism, and self-defense in a candid and honest podcast for our brothers and sisters in arms. Here's your host, James Kalita.
Thank you for tuning in to episode 78 of the Out of Order Gun Rights Podcast. Today's sponsor is Gift for Gun Nuts, giftforgunnuts.com, where you can find cool, unusual, creative gifts for the firearm enthusiast in your life. There's 97 days until Christmas, and at giftforgunnuts.com you'll find they're counting down every day. They're posting new and unique things that you can buy for the firearms enthusiast in your life. Or if you shop for yourself, for you. Today's guest is Aubrey Taylor, and Aubrey is a survivor. She's a motorcycle enthusiast. She concealed carry, and in February of this year, she found herself attacked while riding a motorcycle in traffic and was able to use her firearm defensively. And in this interview, we talk about everything that goes into that. She recounts for us the incident. We talk about the legal process that she went through after the shooting, the social process that she went through, where the comments on Facebook, on social media, how people were attacking her, criticizing her, the effects that it had physiologically, and emotionally. After. And I interviewed Aubrey after listening to another interview that she did on a radio station in Washington, and I posted a link to that on the show notes page. So I really encourage everyone listening to this to listen to both of these, because a lot of the questions that I asked were follow-up questions I had after listening to that interview, and both of them I think are very bragging about my own interview, but both interviews are very helpful and educational for gun owners, because we can train on the draw stroke, and we can train on tactics, and we can train on what to do in that scenario. But there is a huge part of surviving a deadly force encounter that we can't train for, and the closest thing I can think of to training, to practicing those aspects, is to talk to people who have lived through it, and that is why I wanted to interview Aubrey, and I'm very grateful that she agreed to share her story with us. The other place where I got my questions is from reading Lieutenant Grossman's books on killing and on combat, and if you haven't read those yet, I really recommend that you do, because he talks a lot about the emotional and psychological effects of killing, and I think it's important for gun owners to be aware of that. As he says often throughout the book, forewarned is forearmed. If you come out of a deadly force encounter alive but unprepared for what your mind and your body are going, how your mind and body are going to respond, then you may not come out of it as well as if you had read his books beforehand. So I'll include links to both of those on the show notes page as well. And in talking to Aubrey, I'm disappointed in the way people responded to her on social media, in the news article comments and social media comments. So if you believe in concealed carry, if you believe in people using firearms for self-defense, if you listen to this and you are as proud of her as I am for surviving and handling herself so well after the fact, I would hope that you go and post some encouragement, in the comments. And there is a GoFundMe. I'm not sure if it's still running or if it is completed, but consider donating, as you'll find out if you didn't know already. Defending yourself with a firearm is very expensive, legally, medically, and so there'll be a link to the GoFundMe page on the show notes as well. And the show notes page will be outoforderjameskalita.com/78. And now here's Aubrey.
Aubrey Taylor, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, thanks. So Aubrey, back in, I think it was February of this year, you were attacked while riding your motorcycle, and you were able to use your firearm to defend yourself. Would you tell us a little about what happened?
Yeah, so it was back on the 8th of February. I was commuting home from work at around like a 4:45, 5 o'clock on a Thursday in a pretty well-traveled part on the freeway. There's always stop-and-go traffic there between that time. So I was commuting home, and I was in front of a vehicle, and we were kind of just going with stop-and-go traffic, and I like to leave a little bit of space in between myself and the car in front of me. It's kind of what we call a buffer zone, and that's so we don't have to like stop and go. We can just like cruise in like first or second gear and not having to stop. So it kind of helps the flow of traffic and the lane we're in. So I was just leaving more space between myself and the car in front of me. The vehicle behind me, the driver's name was Bruce, and that was the man who attacked me later on. We were driving in that lane. I was in front of him in the carpool lane, and he all of a sudden didn't like the fact that I was leaving so much space between myself and the car in front of me, and he began to, he drove up really close behind me and almost rear-ended me as I'm on my motorcycle, and we start to take off, and he then proceeds to drive on the shoulder to the left of me and try to run me into the cars in the lane next to us, which we consider the fast lane, which is next to the carpool lane. And he did that, tried to do that a couple of times, and I got away from him, and our lane came to a stop. And I went to kind of turn around and see what was going on, and his door was already open, and he was already like charging at me. So I put my kickstand down and got off my motorcycle, and we began the confrontation, and he chest bumped me. And so I pushed him back, and then he charged back at me, put his hands on my shoulders, and at that time I tried to squirm away, and I couldn't, and so I headbutted him with my helmet on. And then at that time, the fight ensued, and he was being extremely aggressive, and he was bashing my head against the K-rail Jersey barriers that are dividing the freeways. And I received a concussion and stuff from that, and as all that was happening, I got my jacket zipped down, and I pulled my firearm out and released one round into him, and then he fell back, and that was kind of the end of it. It all happened quickly, probably within about 10 seconds, I would say.
From you drawing your firearm to shooting, or the entire fight?
From the entire fight, from the grab to the ground, was about 10 seconds.
Wow, that took a while to explain, but that happened really fast.
And that's what I try to tell people. I mean, there's plenty more detail in between all of that, just by like how violent he was and the amount of force he was using towards me, and I lost consciousness a few times during all that, and so it was extremely terrifying, and it's something that I couldn't even dream of it or have a nightmare about it, because it's so like out of this world to have happen.
And so I guess just to have the picture, at what point did you come off of the motorcycle?
So we were, check back up. So we were in the lane, and our lane had come to a stop, as all the other lanes have come to a stop. And we're stopped, and I go to turn around to to figure out what the problem was, and I seen the door was already open when I was scanning my head, and I looked in my mirror. And as I was turning, I looked in my mirror to kind of see behind me, and that's when I kept turning more and noticed the door was open, and he was pretty much already on my side, the left side of the motorcycle, in the lane. and then I thought he was like going to push me over or something was going to happen, and so that's why I put my kickstand down and got off so I could.
Oh,
I was able to be in a position to defend myself if something happened.
sure. No, I just wasn't sure if he had pulled you off, or I was kind of wondering how. Yeah. So in one of the other interviews you had done, I heard you mention that you'd only been carrying for a year. What inspired you to start carrying?
I have a lot of friends who are in the military, and I would always go shooting with them, and they would always be carrying. And I shot rifles and stuff before I was 21, and then after I turned 21, I just had some like I don't know if like previous experiences like that, but like at the time I was a single, female at 21. I was working at a bar, and so had been in some situations prior to that to where I told my friends about it, and they go, no, we need to get you some protection. And I have pepper spray and all that as well. But my friend he was like, hey, I have a firearm. I would really like you to have on you. And so, yeah, so I purchased it and stuff. And so it was definitely an experience owning a firearm for sure.
Right. Yeah. And did you seek out any type of formal training before this?
No, I didn't. Washington obviously is an open carry state, so I actually didn't even get the firearm until I applied for my concealed carry. Yeah, but no, I didn't have any other training. I just had friends that kind of taught me up in the mountains type thing.
Gotcha. Okay. So during the shooting, and I think you kind of alluded to this earlier, was there a sense of time slowing down?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was all, I could feel everything happening, but it's like everything's a blur. Like I felt like my eyes were open, but I also felt like they were closed, because when I try to like go back and like visualize stuff, I can't see it, but I can feel it. And I remember what it felt like when it was happening. I just can't like physically like bring up a memory and like remember like the colors of stuff or what was happening. So it was all just like a blur trying to go back and remember it. But at the time, yeah, I definitely felt everything was very slow.
And then, so I guess, having not had to live through this myself, all I have is really what Grossman wrote in his books, and they always warn you that you're going to lose fine motor coordination. And I remember you telling the story how you were able to get it out from inside your jacket, and how'd you do that?
Yeah. So, and that's another thing. Like I'd seen was in the discussion is people had asked, how did she forget she had a firearm? And that's almost the same thing as how I got it out. It was just there. Like you can train all you want, and you can train for these scenarios, but until your adrenaline is actually pumping through your body and you're in the scenario, everything goes out of the window. Everything, especially when you're not like training all the time. And so I almost had like a feeling like my everything and my arm and my wrist, everything was connecting to zip my jacket down, get my hand on the grip, use my other hand to pull it out of the holster, and then get into the position to let go or to, release the round. So it all just felt like it was almost automatic when I was thinking like, you're dying, you need to kill him, like you need to get him away from you. You have your gun, use it. And so it's just everything just felt automatic, like it was just supposed to happen. It's so hard to explain like what it felt like or what it feels like having to do that. You can talk about all these scenarios, but until you feel it, you don't know what it is, what's going on.
Right, which is really why I'm so glad you agreed to talk to us, because we train and people talk about defending their families, but you can't. This is the part that you can't practice and you can't train for. So thank you.
You can't, and then you can't practice for it. You can't practice before it, and you can't practice after. Like the legal portion, the emotional portion, the everything after is something. It's so hard to live with, and I would never wish this on anybody. I would never want to say, oh, then take a walk walk in my shoes, or, imagine if it's happened to you or whatever. Like, I would never want to even tell anybody that, because it's so hard. It's very hard. Makes life very hard.
So obviously you know how to aim your firearm. Do you remember being able to aim it, or were you shooting instinctively?
I want to say it was just instinctively, because I pulled it out, and the first solid thing that my muzzle touched, I fired. So, I mean, I knew it could have been me, because I was, I had my arm up trying to get him off, push him off of me from fetal. So I could have pointed at my hand or something, but I pointed it, and it hit something solid, and I let it off, hoping I hit him, because I was just coming to. Obviously I have a helmet on, so it's dark. He's covering it. Like, it was
so
horrible.
You were in the fetal position, and I guess shooting across your body up at him. Is that okay? Wow. And so let's talk about after the shooting, because I think that's something guys especially don't think about. But what goes through your mind after you've survived?
Everything runs through your mind. Even the smallest things, like my personality, I definitely have noticed, and I've asked my friends to kind of keep tabs on me, and I know I shouldn't, but it's interesting to see what in my life has changed since this experience. It literally changes everything. Like, I don't like certain foods now. I've gained likeness for foods I've never liked before. There's a chemical reaction in your brain that changes everything, and I've forgotten how to do certain things. I remember how to do things I forgot to do years ago, and it's everything runs through your mind, all hours of the day. The incident happening, what I was doing before that day, what I had for breakfast yesterday, and I can never get a full thought out without it changing to something or reliving the incident all the time. So it's horrible.
One of the things they tell us to prepare for is that you'll experience a period of elation, and then it will be followed by remorse or depression. Did you live through that?
Oh, it's all that. All those are all of the same every day. The emotions shuffle every day. There's never been guilt. I've never felt guilt, and I know that may sound harsh. I say, I'm not mad, or I'm not teasing anything about it, but I don't feel guilty for having to defend my life, and so I never felt guilt about that. But everything else, the depression, the why did no one help me, or why this happened to me, why me, what do I have to gain from this, why, what experiences is going to put his family through, what his wife's going through now. Like, I think of everything, and all the emotions are there all the time.
So that's the emotional part that you lived through. And then how soon after did you have to start dealing with the legal aspects?
Well, the day of, because I had to obviously give a statement and everything, which, being in the hospital, and that was hard, because, detectives walk in, there's cops waiting outside of my door. I was never handcuffed past just before the ambulance arrived to the scene, and then they took the handcuffs off, and then I was clear. I wouldn't say cleared, but I was good to go. Like, I wasn't detained at all anymore, and so I was in the ambulance, not cuffed. I went to the hospital, not cuffed, but they did have officers there waiting for the detective on the case to get there with the ATF, the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms agent was there, and they both interviewed me right in the hospital. Gave me the information from the scene. He was passed away. You're free to go when you get discharged. And then the next day is when the lawyer called me. A friend of mine had reached out to a family friend, a lawyer of theirs, and he had called me immediately, and we had started. He'd introduced himself and kind of was telling me what the process is. So it was immediate. I'd say.
Wow. And was there, after interviewing with the detectives and the ATF, were you confident that you weren't going to be charged, or was that sort of always in the back of your mind?
Oh, no, that was in the back of my mind until the day my lawyer called me to tell me I wasn't getting charged. I found out 2 days before. I'd known Wednesday when they released the details on Friday. So I'd known a couple of days before everyone. But I mean, it's not something I didn't want to tell anybody. I don't want to talk to anybody. I wanted to stay by myself and stuff. But
so once, and then there's the media exposure, and I remember you mentioning that people were saying some really horrible and negative things. How did you handle that?
That was the worst. That was the worst part. I immediately when I got my phone back from the hospital. It was dinging down the hallway. They were walking my things down the hallway, and I could hear my phone going off. And people were tagging me all these things. I was getting, hundreds of messages, hundreds of phone calls. And I immediately disabled my Facebook and my social media because it was too much. I went on I shouldn't have and read comments oh, she's a murderer. She could have did this. She could have did that. She deserves to go to jail. She needs to rot in hell. Blah blah blah. I had never imagined people could be so nasty towards someone that just something just happened to them, that traumatic. So it's definitely an eye opener, and it makes me change. That's another thing my personality has changed from is society, and it's so strange. It's just to think about how nasty people can be towards someone. It's almost embarrassing for humanity, I'd say.
It sounds. And so now that everything's in the past, what has it changed the way you carry, how you carry, what you carry?
Yeah, so I know I'm not in trouble, but I know I'm gonna not gain some fans for this move. But when I got my firearm back from the police, they released all my possessions back towards me. I carried out of the building. They handed it to me, and I'd holstered right outside in the parking lot. And about a week later, I normally have done, I usually leave my firearm in my car or my truck. It's in my backpack, tucked underneath my seat, locked doors, back into the driveway every time. Alarm set, all that. And I now do have a lockbox for my vehicle, even though I never plan to leave my firearm ever again in my vehicle. I do have a lockbox for when I do next time. So I learned that lesson. But someone had broken into my vehicle and stole my backpack. Just my backpack, and the firearm was in there. And so they didn't take anything else. No money. I had money in the ashtray. Didn't take any of that. I had some other, possessions that were in the front seat that definitely were valuable. But they didn't take any of that. They just took the backpack. And I obviously reported when I woke up the next morning, was like, my backpack's not here. So I'd reported my gun was, stolen and stuff. So that was unfortunate. And so now I carry an XD now. So it's definitely changed. I have a full-size gun now, and I prefer not to have a big one, but until I can afford another one.
Oh, okay. And it was a shield that you were carrying before, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a perfect carry gun. I love that gun.
Yeah. I have one of those, and I have an XDS too. They're both very nice to carry. Are you? And I'm asking this from the idea now that you have survived this. If there's any type of training that you're going to seek because you wished you would have known beforehand.
Yeah. So after the incident, about 2 months after, I met some really awesome people within the community, and they reached out to me and they invited me out to the ASI, with the ASI matches out here that we have, the active shooting competition we have out here. So I've been doing that. So I've been training like that, and then I also have I usually take like a self-defense course once a month, training with firearms and stuff like that at the local range out here. So I definitely wanted to spruce up my training for sure.
So, and you have a GoFundMe page, and that's want to tell us about that?
Yeah. So my friends started that for me because I had no idea like what was going on. I had no idea they even started that until after. Obviously, they told me about it, and I got a lawyer, and they was like, it's going to cost this much for me to even, go into court. And so that was literally the most helpful thing. And because I wasn't expecting to have to dish out thousands of dollars for something that I didn't want, I didn't do, I didn't ask for. And so the GoFundMe and the support from everybody is mind-blowing to me, and it's helped me pay off a lot of debt, just because just the medical bills in general, the therapies, the sessions, the therapist, because my personal medical insurance only covers a certain amount per year, and so everything else I have to pay out of pocket for. And the therapist, it's $120 an hour for the session, because it's not like just a typical therapist, like a family therapist, like it's PTSD. It's all these extra things I have to work on, and so those things, the specialists, obviously, they cost more the more things they have training in. And so that was the most frustrating part, and so I actually had to stop with therapy just because I couldn't afford it. As just my credit card was maxed out, and so with the GoFundMe, it definitely helped me pay that off. Paid off my ambulance bill. That was like $6,000 for the ambulance ride the night of. And even with financial aid, and even with telling them I only make this much money, my insurance covers this much, and it was still way up there. And I have just everything else. I was out of work for over a month and a half, and that was very damaging. So it was a commute. It was not knowing what to do daily, and it's hard. And so it felt like I was going crazy. Like it's what it feels like, because you can't do anything, you can't think any thoughts all the way through, and so you're constantly. It's just it's hard. So the GoFundMe definitely helped, and I thank people so much for all of that. And when I do get ahead, I definitely will be donating on GoFundMe's for people, and because it helps. Like I'm definitely an advocate for that. Like it definitely helps people. Every dollar counts towards something, and it's amazing. But again, there's some people that say the nasty things, and then there's people that are donating money that they know they're not going to get back to a complete stranger because they feel so compassionate. So it's going back to all the bad things on social media. I don't understand that, but GoFundMe is definitely a miracle for sure.
Great. And wow, I really thank you for this. I feel like there's going to be so many more questions I have later on. But I thank you so much for coming on the show, and I'm very happy that you survived, and I know it's a struggle, but I'm glad you survived.
I like I said, I appreciate all the support. Everything positive is what makes it worth it. So just knowing that people, they call me a hero. I'm like, oh, no one's hero. Like I don't want to be a hero. I want to be like a role model for women and men to carry, and whoever. Just yeah.
And I guess that's a question I should probably ask you. I think it's been implicit, but having lived through this, do you believe that people should carry for self-defense? And do you still believe in that? And do you still think it's a good idea?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Actually, we can go back to the advice thing. My advice is to definitely invest in self-defense training with and without a firearm. Especially if you live in areas that have like a higher like crime rate or you're, I don't know, going to a concert where you can't bring a firearm, but you can still like defend yourself or people you're with or something like that. So I would definitely say get at least just a basic course in self-defense, because it teaches you so many things that you're not going to get in real life, because like I said, it just doesn't happen daily. So the training, seeking out training, even just for the basic things, is so monumental. And I'm so happy that I did it, because it's definitely opened my eyes to where now, if I ever in another situation, I know how to handle it before I would even need a firearm. Not that my situation was easily avoidable, but now I know I could, if I do need to, I won't immediately reach for my firearm, as people have mentioned, like, oh, now if you ever get into a fight, you're immediately going to do that. And I'm like, well, no, I don't ever have to use, I never wanted to use my firearm for self-defense. I wanted it there in case I had to, and I did. And so I'm very happy that I did have it there that day.
And, you mentioned pepper spray in the beginning, and I think, people that out there that don't like guns like to go, well, there's pepper spray. And if you had pepper spray, do you feel like it would have been an effective tool for you in that incident?
I mean, it all just depends. I mean, most people carry purses. I'm on a bike. Like, I can't really, hold on, so let me reach in my backpack. Like, it's not that easy. It wouldn't have been as easily accessible, even if it was on my keychain. I would have to take my keys out of the ignition, and that's not something that just pops into your head. Like, oh, take your keys off, get your pepper spray. I still had the gloves on and all that. And so that could have inhibited the pepper spray at any point in time, and even the firearm. So, thankfully it was able to fit into the trigger area. Because I did have my motorcycle gloves on, which are, thicker leather gloves. So.
Yeah, and so, and the position you described yourself being in when you fired, that, you wouldn't have been able to aim for his face with the.
Yeah,
with the
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And stuff. So, I mean, there's so many like what ifs, or, and that. So I try not to think about that, because there's plenty of things, that could have happened. And unfortunately, or fortunately, or whatever, it happened this way. So gotta.
So I feel like your story is sort of an answer to this question in itself. But for the anti-gun people that are out there that say, only the police should have guns, and we shouldn't have concealed carry, do you anything specific to say to them?
I mean, it's everyone has their own personal belief system and what they do, and sometimes it comes down to religion. And like I said, I would never want to say, oh, walk in my experience, or what would you have done in my experience, and it's just to each their own.
Okay.
I'm happy I had my firearm in my situation, or else I would have been dead. And that's really what it comes down to. No firearm, I wouldn't have been here. So I guess that's all I can say about that one.
Okay. Well, I thank you so much for being on the show. Any parting words for our listeners?
Keep calm, carry on. I would say.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yep, no problem.
Thanks again for tuning in to episode 78 of the Out of Order Gun Rights podcast. Show notes page for this episode is outoforderjameskalita.com/78, and encourage you to go there to listen to the other interview Aubrey did, and also if you haven't read Grossman's books, to check those out. And if you found this on Facebook, please comment. Let Aubrey know that the gun owners out there support her. And this is Out of Order, James Kalita. We'll see you next time.